question for you. Who has ever forgot his password? Please raise your hand. Okay. And those of you who do not raise your hand, do you use one of that passwords? So it's the most common used passwords in the world, and database of 10,000 most used passwords could open up to 90% of all accounts of the world. So like we said before on the panel, the biggest problem in the world for cybersecurity is human factor. And we think that we know how to solve that, but before I want to give you a picture of how big this problem is today. $6 trillion per year will cost crimes by 2029 of such kind of cyber attacks. 150 millions will spend average company for removing the consequences of such attacks. From 76 to 95% of all attacks usually involve stealing user credentials. So no need to spend a lot of money on complex measures to send spies and to make some very complex strategies because everybody using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as a password. And 7 from each 10 attacks could easily be solved using standard IT measures for protection. And how it could be solved? Now we have a blockchain, and everybody knows that basically it could be used as source of trust. And we decided to put the hash of the data in blockchain, so every server could check the validity of the data there instead of relying on central servers. And you will have your own data in the form of a browser certificate. It's just a container for your public key, for example. And the hash of it will be stored on blockchain, so you will not share your data with any kind of service. You could choose which kind of server will receive your data, and that server could rely on the blockchain. Any kind of 2FA could be optional for the scheme. It could be UTF device, Google Authenticator, or something like that. And the good thing about that is it's completely compliant with GDPR and all other regulations. Like maybe you remember this situation from Pirates of the Caribbean, when no need of key, you just could have a picture of the key. In our case, there is no need to have the data on the server side. You could just share data hash, and server will check data hash in the blockchain, so your data will be stored on your side. Good idea and good thing about this solution that it could be used as a distributed PKI system instead of traditional centralized certificates that is now issued by certification authorities like VeriSign, GlobalSign, Let's Encrypt, and all of that. So instead of relying on central server, system of masternode will be able to issue certificate for you, and we will have 300 masternodes in the first batch that is responsible by their stakes and reputation for proper work in the network. And we have a complex system of committee and election of each node who will close the block or issue the block, and it will help the system to work properly with proper monetized incentives for each network participants. And this system could be used for verification of hash and like registration authority and extended validation like we have now in SSL TLS certificates and traditional PKI system. Based on that, we could build proper IoT systems, because right now when manufacturer issue some device like web camera, each web camera of CCTV network right now relies on same login and passwords for each device in the world. So once hacker could get access to one device, he controls all network because all devices uses the same login and the same password. And it's a drawback of our modern system because logins and passwords were created 30 years ago when it was no such a big quantity of devices and there are no it was not so problem at all. And today we have a big problem with IoT because IoT can't rely on traditional factor, what do you know? They can't know anything, it's just a device. So it should be unique identificator from the factory for each of the device, and it could be easily created by the system. Another use case is SSH keys for servers. And now going to token economy, I want to ask you, of course, everybody see price of Ethereum right now, but despite we have the most successful token economy in crypto space, Ethereum, and it's old cap, I'm sorry for that, but because of ICO use case, Ethereum goes up during previous year, and even in the beginning of this year, we got a very big price for one Ethereum only because one use case and only because ICO. But this picture stop all plans of Ethereum for proper use in enterprise space because lack of proper architecture, lack of proper knowledge of creating such systems give us a problem of not working public blockchain. And that means that it's really hard for regular enterprise to rely on such blockchain because somebody should guarantee that everything will be work properly. And what will you say if, for example, your energy station will rely on blockchains that could be stopped at any time because of other application? It's not a proper situation for the world. So we have a very bad situation for integration of blockchain solutions. 90% of all blockchain enterprise projects will be stopped. Technology is very hard to implement. Two companies controls 51% of the space, and only 1% of CTOs and CTOs really want to integrate something. And previously announced releases being delayed. Why all that happens? What kind of bridges do we need for sticking token economy to enterprise systems? We have trilemma with three sides. It's usability, security, and business fit. Usually when we have one of that, for example, usability, it will be not very secured. When we have good security, it will be not very usable because you need to perform a lot of actions like second factor, additional UTF device for USB and something like that. Or it will be not very, it will have not very good fit for business because user don't want to use the solution that requires a lot of actions. So user will go to another service instead of yours if you have good security. And what other things should be present in blockchain solution to be suitable for enterprise? Throughput. Like we said several times, if you have proper architecture, it doesn't matter how much transactions your blockchain will support, 10,000 or 7 per second. You just put identity once on the blockchain and you could read this information with unlimited atoms with no problem for throughput. Risk management. One company should be responsible and should make a contract with the enterprise. And it is really hard for enterprise to understand our principle code is the law. Because when code is the law, it means that nobody is responsible for them. But it could be solved with the insurance program when some company outside the crypto will guarantee by some insurance fund that if some mistake happen in the blockchain consensus mechanism, any kind of mistakes, this company will be responsible for this kind of problem. And pricing policy. It is really hard to understand how to pay for blockchain solution when you have a different price for transactions each few minutes. They want, big companies want to predict budgets for years. So we should stick price to standard fiat currency, but we should somehow connect that with the token economy. So how can we do that? We could make one certificate in our system, $1, but token price will be volatile, and Oracle will check the price on the exchange and make a proper price of cert in tokens. And during our token sale, we got a very good distribution of tokens between 5,000 participants, and we thought it will be enough for starting our token economy. We thought that on first stage we will distribute 100 nodes, on second stage it will be 150 nodes, and the third stage we will distribute nodes by auction mechanism, but it's completely was crashed by the network conditions, by the market conditions. When everything crashed after we got on exchanges, we got a problem when only few addresses controls a big part of the network, and it completely compliant with the usual situation of the world where Gini index gives usual distribution of goods and services when a small bunch of people controls a big part of general wealth. The same situation we got in our token distribution chart, and we start thinking how we could solve that problem so that few biggest guys will not control all the network, but still we will have a proper security and they will not go and sell their tokens. So we check the situation with EOS when we have a block producers, and that block producers control a big part of tokens, but still they have, the biggest one have only 2.45% of total supply. It gives us the idea that we could make the system better, and instead of making a fixed amount of block producers, we decided to make a committee that will change the block producers each time under very complex consensus mechanism that consists of 3 layers. First layer is stake. It's just a tokens on the node, like in traditional proof of stake mechanism. We prefer to call it proof of service. And beside of that, we have a reputation. And reputation can't be earned by the money, only by a proper work during certain period of time. So an attacker with unlimited resources will be unable to gain a control of the network just because of the money. Each node will be responsible by their reputation and their stake. And the third thing that is very important is betting system, when each node will be able to make a bet on their own reliability, increasing their chances to one block. So good reputation is as valuable as money. And due to this consensus mechanism, we got a very interesting figures about payback of owning the node. So now we have a big hype about establishing a node from our token holders, and it is a good fundament for proper work of node owners for next years. And what upcoming challenges do we have about expanding our solution for the space? So first, we need to make concept of root of trust wide. Right now, Google implements additional step for checking traditional SSL TLS certificates. So you should, or your servers should check the certificates with the help of Google mechanism. And with the solutions that could be provided with the blockchain, there is no need to make any additional check, because traditional SSL TLS is not transparent at all. You should check via centralized authorities, via certificate revocation lists, and with blockchain, this data is always transparent and accessible from any point of the planet. We should grow the apps and tools infrastructure. It means to build in additional solutions for access management or for any kind of use of our concept as you want. And we should teach existing endpoints to understand blockchain, because right now it is hard for regular browser to understand how they should check this certificate. So we're working with browsers, and we will have a custom Chromium blockchain browser that will be able to work with our system. So we think that it's time to go from trust by authority to trust by computation, because it's much proper, much better fit architecture for modern world. And the last thing I want to say is, do you remember these stickers that is used by employees to write a password? Let's forget about that and use blockchain-based solution. Thank you. I'm ready to answer questions if you have. Yes?
Basically, you are trying to put that in the public blockchain, right?
Hash of this data. Not
Hash
this
of the data, okay.
Hash.
So, do you think it is really secure? Because people are building a lot of private blockchains where they think they need some kind of a special access management in order to get to the access node itself. And it has been actually, I've been talking with various companies like IBM, Cisco, of the worlds. They are very much convinced that the public blockchain is insecure and someone can get into it and basically can crash it.
So first of all, I want to say that private blockchain is not a blockchain at all. If you have private blockchain, it's just a big database, and you will have a problem with security of private blockchain. But some companies trying to earn money and sell private blockchain as real blockchain to these big companies and try to persuade them that they will create a proper solution that will be really secured. But the reality is only system in the world that work during 10 years and nobody is able to hack it is Bitcoin blockchain, and it has a public blockchain that is protected by proof of work. Our challenge is to create effective proof of stake mechanism that will have the same security as the Bitcoin proof of work mechanism. And I think that the most common problem for all that companies that somebody trying to sell them not proper architecture of public blockchain. When you have a effective architecture and it is properly designed, it will be no problem with security, because you will have private key, and I think everybody knows that SHA 256 is impossible to hack, and if you use all standard mechanism but it's properly designed, you will have the same level of security like Bitcoin blockchain. And any kind of private blockchains that could be sold to these big companies is just earning of money by some third parties, not the real effective solution.
We might have time for one more. Any other questions for Alex?
So Alex, what is your background, and when did you start in the blockchain interest? How did you get into this venture? A little bit of story about you.
I started reading about Bitcoin in 2011, and only in 2013 I started to be deep in the space. So started to buy Bitcoins and understanding how we could use this technology. And in 2015 I started to run REMME. After I forgot my password to Ethereum ICO wallet, it took 3 days from me to restore password. It was some kind of a brute force in myself, and it was a bad decision because I sold part of my Ethers in that time. I should wait, but anyway, it was an idea for me how we could. We have Ethereum in few years. We will have solutions without banks, without lawyers, when some ships with goods will transfer and smart contracts will pay for that. But we still rely on technology from 80s with logins and passwords. We should change that somehow. So we started REMME. REMME stands for Remember Me. So everybody will be able to get a very good design solution with one-click access and without need of any kind of logins and passwords, and with no possibility of traditional hacks and no possibility of man in the middle, key login, brute forcing, and phishing, most common attack.